Hello, everyone. My name is Beici Huang, Supervising Counselor Advocate at Restore NYC. Restore is an anti-trafficking organization based in New York City. Our mission is to make freedom real for the survivors of human trafficking in the United States. Today, I'm so honored to be here to introduce the CTI framework at Restore and how we've applied this approach, particularly working with Asian survivors of human trafficking in the illicit massage industry. I will use a stack of slides to facilitate this training. Although this is pre-recorded, I am available for any feedback or question. So I will provide my contact information towards the end of the session. Now let's begin. A little bit more introduction about myself. I am a counselor, case manager, and a court advocate for the survivors I encounter at Restore NYC. I've been trained and specialized in victim identification, particularly for the East Asian women that are in the illicit massage industry. I've also trained and provided technical assistance to over 30 partnerships across the US, including law enforcement, attorneys, service providers, and community organizers over the past 5 years. I also supervise counselor advocates at Restore NYC. Recently, we published a paper in this book about an overview of the today's IMI. So if you are interested, feel free to check that out. So today, since we're talking about CTI framework, I'd like to start with what is CTI. So CTI stands for culture, trauma, and industry. It is one of the intellectual properties of Restore NYC. And this is developed solely based on Restore's direct experiences working with the population for extensive years. We believe that the service delivery is going to be most effective when we are at the cross-section of these three elements. So this is exactly like this Venn diagram that you're seeing. We want to always stand in the center of culture, industry, trauma. And we provide services culturally sensitive, industry acknowledged, and trauma informed. And in this way, we believe this will be the most beneficial for the survivors of trafficking that we encounter in IMI. So the next session, we are going to go through some breakdown of the three elements. And for the learning purpose today, I'm going to introduce these three elements in the order of ICT. So industry, culture, and trauma. And there's a little structure for today. So I will mostly introduce what is it first, and then I will also provide some implication of that. And that is going to lead the practice I recommend in this field. So here we go. What is IMI? And what are some characteristics of this industry? So I'm sure that many of the attendees for this conference this year that already have a lot of knowledge about human trafficking, but just to be transparent and to set us in a good foundation for today's learning, I'd like just to provide a little bit more definition and context about this industry and from the definition. So illicit massage business, or we say illicit massage industry, IMB or IMI. And today I'm also going to use both terms in this training to refer to illicit massage business or illicit massage industry. So we define that as it is an establishment that puts on the facade of a legitimate massage business in order to provide commercial sex services. From a Polaris report, and if you don't know, Polaris is the biggest national anti-trafficking organization, and from a report that they recently released, they estimate that from the data, there are over 9,000 IMIs in the United States. And every state has been recognized that there is at least one IMB. So the IMBs are almost all over. The top 3 states are California, New York, and Texas. By mid of 2021, which is this year, according to a report released by Hayrick Research, their data showed that it is likely this number has increased to 11,000. With this industry, about the scope and its number and the stakeholders in, with all those together, it is estimated that this is an industry with estimated $3 billion annually. It is a very, very profitable industry, and it is one of the most developed industry in the human trafficking too. So it has grown a lot over the years. So the next, I'm going to go through some quick facts about who is the main people involved in this industry. And because we are a service agency, so we're going to focus on who are in there as the worker and the women, the clients we serve. So from our experiences that most of the workers in the IMIs are women, adult women, and they are likely to be from East Asian. And more specifically, it's likely that they are from mainland China. So they are Mandarin speaking and not English fluent. The average age of these women are 38 years old. And this is solely based on the data that Restore has, just to be transparent. And then 70% of them are mothers. These data are from a report Restore released in 2017 about analysis of the women in IMI that Restore has served. So over the years, the average age, or the percentage of mothers may have slightly changed, but anecdotally, as a counselor, I can say that these numbers remain still pretty convincing to our knowledge. So, when we say East Asian, I also want to emphasize that though this industry has mostly been taken by Mandarin-speaking women, we do see that in the current IMI, there is a compound of ethnicity group in this industry, including Mandarin-speaking Chinese, Korean Chinese, women from South Korea, or Thai or Vietnamese communities. So it is pretty diverse, but the main body is Mandarin-speaking women. So I'd like to speak from 3 aspects about the characteristics about this industry that are very unique and sometimes gets misunderstood. So I'm going to speak from means, money, and movement. So by means, this is means of how trafficking has happened. And the first fact I'm going to present is that the massage work, which we say literally when people use this is a massage parlor and it describe this work as massage work, this term that people use is sometimes very deceptive and effective. When we say deceptive, that means it does mean massage work, but we just said illicit massage business is a facade of massage with underneath it implies that commercial sex service is available there. So it is not purely massage work. However, we say it effective, that is because the implication here, using the massage work as a facade of description works. And it not only works for the customers to downplay that they are just getting massage instead of saying that I'm getting sex work. It also works so effectively in recruiting women to this work. And this is very closely tied to the implication, the the importance of the implication in this culture, in East Asian culture, just easy for people, women, to understand that, oh, I'm here for a massage job. But when they come, they end up realizing, oh, it's not only massage, it is something beyond massage. And they didn't realize that it might include sex work. So that's why we say it's deceptive and also effective. It deceives the women, but it also effectively helps them to recruit, the business to recruit women. The implication here is so important, and that is because the threats is usually about the culture identity to the workers in this industry, not about, not so much straightforward with force. So, and again, this is tied to the main body of the workers that involved in this industry. We know that there are East Asian women, they don't speak so much English, and the culture they come from is somewhat not so welcoming about sex and not so comfortable talking about sex in the public. So when the shame is involved, that threats to that cultural identity just seems more impactful for the women than the force itself. So TVPA definition, the federal definition for trafficking is force, fraud, coercion. And we always try to identify when force, fraud, or coercion happened in one of the in those cases. And as our finding, that coercion is the primary means used by traffickers in IMI. And coercion is mostly about psychological intimidation, not physical force. And this is by traffickers. So a lot of power control, a lot of threats, verbal threats, or even just body language, very subtle, very silent, not fiercely, not so obvious, but it just controls the women so much. And day by day, the coercion, the psychological control becomes more and more severe. And instead, force is usually used by the customers. And the managers do not act or even downplay women's complaints when that happens. So a customer uses force to force the women to provide sex service after a massage or during a massage. They complain to the manager. Manager usually do not act on anything and even tell them that don't call the policeman, or just downplay, saying that it is so normal in here. You do the work or not. So coercion, again, coercion and force, how that's played in the trafficking case in the IMI. The second thing is about money. So I know in other industry, we know that the victims are not getting any money, and they are lured into the trafficking ring because they actually need money or housing. In the IMI, though, the fact is that majority of those women keep money, keep their earnings, and they actually earn money from this industry by working in the industry. And the earning of working in one massage parlor for one woman, it varies, but anecdotally from our cases, again, it varies between 2,000 to 8,000 per month. It is a wide range, and that's why we also say that this is an industry that generates a lot of revenue. So the people in the industry do make money and keep the money, and that's also a very strong pull reason for those women to come here to stay in the industry, and because they need money for a lot of their family needs. And we will talk about that in culture too. So according to our data, a woman stays at a IMB, the length of their stay varies, and most commonly we see that the length varies from 1 day to 3 months. So if it's 1 day, they come here for some reason, they decided not to stay, they leave the same day, as soon as the same day, especially if they already have a home in that city. So for example, they live in Flushing, New York, they find a business, a parlor, 10 blocks away in Flushing. They went there, they checked that out, and they stay for 1 day and they don't like this job or so for some reason, or they don't want to stay there anymore. They're able to go back to their apartment 10 blocks away. And that makes the job just lasting for 1 day. 3 months is more of the case that when the woman lives in one place but works in out of the state of their home. So the long trip, the travel makes the worse. It makes the length of stay counts to offset the cost that they go there. So it varies for the length they stay in one business. And we also see that trafficking experiences is not often tied to the current IMB locations. We have been called to assist in many raids or law enforcement operations. And we have received and worked with many women that coming out from the raid straight. Often if we are able to identify a woman who is a victim of trafficking, it is not necessarily really tied to this one operation where it happened, this location where the operation happened. It is often tied to some older past job experiences happened somewhere else. So that is just something very unique about this industry. Another thing that we just mentioned briefly is that many of those women do travel independently and do go out of the state to work. And that may make sense for why they stay in a place for 3 months instead of a shorter time. So we've seen women travel between the coast even. So say a woman lives in Flushing, New York, and they go to Colorado for a job and they stay, it costs them for flight ticket, for cabs, and all those costs. So they probably want to stay a little bit longer to be able to earn some money and then come back to New York for a break. So many of them do travel independently, as close as cross a borough in your city, as far as cross state. And also something unique about the industry is that when it is out of the city setting, like New York City, there are higher identification rates, meaning higher possibility to identify the woman is a victim of human trafficking than the women that stay in your city, live and work. And many of the cases that out of New York State are usually tied back to Flushing, NY. Whether the owner is from there or a group of women travels together from Flushing, or they all have an apartment in NYC, something like that. So there are a lot of connections to NYC.